They say marriage is about trust. But let me tell you something people don't admit out loud. Trust is the easiest thing to fake and the hardest thing to repair. My husband didn't just cheat on me. He turned our love into a stage for his lies, and I was the audience, forced to watch the show. I never thought betrayal would come to me in high definition through a phone screen. Yet there I stood, motionless in my kitchen, the glow of my phone searing my eyes as if it wanted to brand the truth into my skin. The hidden camera we'd planted the day before had caught everything. My husband, Tyler Kendrick, financial consultant and supposed family man, wasn't at the downtown office working late. He was there kissing, touching, devouring a blonde woman like a starving man on the desk I had polished just hours earlier. The betrayal wasn't just physical, it was the soundless cruelty of it, the casualness with which he stripped off the loyalty of 15 years. A stranger might hurt you once. A husband hurts you every time he smiles at you, knowing he's lying. I turned the camera off before their clothes hit the floor. I couldn't stomach seeing the man who used to kiss me goodnight now pressed against someone else. My stomach twisted into sharp knots, bile rising with every heartbeat. The proof was undeniable, and yet I wanted to throw my phone into the sink, pretend I hadn't seen it, pretend I was still blind. But I couldn't. For weeks, his excuses have been piling up like unpaid bills. First, he was coming home at midnight, then 1, then some nights, not at all. He always had the same defense, dismissing me like a nagging secretary. Clients don't work 9 to 5, Lauren. Don't be unreasonable. And I had nodded, forced to smile, and reheated dinner plates that grew colder and colder each night, because believing him was easier than facing the truth. But Natalie, my best friend since college, had seen through it. Tyler still working those crazy hours? She had asked last week, eyes narrowing like she could already smell the rot beneath his polished exterior. I had lied, stirring my latte, whispering, yes, he's dedicated to his clients. But Natalie wasn't convinced. And what about his dedication to you? I'd brushed her off, but her words planted seeds. Seeds that led me to call her late at night, whispering like a criminal, Nat, I need your help with something. And she had come, armed with a disguised camera and a kind of furious loyalty that made me realize how much I'd been living as Tyler's shadow. Now here I was, standing in the kitchen I had scrubbed for years, staring at my phone, watching my marriage collapse in pixels and lies. I opened the china cabinet, pulled down one of Tyler's precious heirloom teacups, and let it slip from my fingers. The crash of porcelain against tile was louder than any scream I could manage. It was destruction. It was rebellion. It was the first choice I had made in years that belonged entirely to me. And it felt glorious. When a husband says he's buying a bed for his office, don't clap your hands for his work ethic. Start digging his grave. No man needs a bed at work unless he's planning to share it. And deep down, I knew. It had started innocently enough, or so I told myself. 2 months earlier, Tyler began coming home later and later. At first it was midnight, then 1, and then not at all. Always with the same script. Big client, emergency, don't wait up. At first, I swallowed the excuses whole. That's the curse of love. You want to believe even when the evidence is rotting in front of you. I told myself he was just ambitious, that success demanded sacrifice. And wasn't that why I had become the perfect wife? So he could rise while I held the ground steady beneath him. But then came his newest request. No, his order. Over breakfast one morning, while he scrolled through his phone like I didn't exist, he announced, Lauren, I need you to clean the downtown office every Tuesday. Clients expect perfection. Not a question, not a plea. and order. And like the obedient wife I had trained myself to be, I nodded, I cleaned, I polished. I vacuumed the hardwood floors of that stylish little historic office he had rented 6 months ago, without ever once asking why he suddenly needed a separate space away from the home office he'd used for years. And then one night, when my loneliness grew heavier than my silence, I confronted him. "I hardly see you anymore," I said, hating the tremor in my voice. "It feels like I live alone." He looked at me like I interrupted him during a board meeting. Then, with a dramatic sigh, he slashed me with words sharper than knives. "I'm working, Lauren. Someone has to pay for this house and your shopping habits." Shopping habits? I hadn't bought a dress in months. Still, I said nothing, swallowing my outrage like poison. And then he dropped the bomb. "In fact," he added casually, "I'm thinking of putting a bed in the office. That way I won't disturb your beauty sleep when I work late." A bed in his office? The words hung in the air like a noose tightening around my throat. I laughed nervously, but inside, denial cracked. Why would he need a bed and a placement for client meetings? Why did he forbid me to ever stop by without warning? Why did my husband, once the man who couldn't stand a night away from me, suddenly find comfort in a separate life I wasn't allowed to touch? That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, my heart pounding with the truth I refused to name. And then came Natalie's voice again, echoing in my head. "What about his dedication to you?" I picked up my phone with trembling hands and dialed her number. "Can you come over tomorrow?" I whispered when she answered. There was silence, then her steady voice. "Of course. What do you need?" I swallowed hard. Proof. They tell women to trust their husbands. Let me say this loud. Trust without proof is a trap. Proof is the only thing that saves your sanity when a liar swears you're crazy. The next morning, after Tyler left for work, Natalie showed up at my door with a shopping bag and the kind of face I'd only seen on her during finals week in college. Focused, determined, ready for war. "You're doing the right thing," she told me as she unpacked the bag. Inside was a sleek wall clock with a tiny hidden camera embedded near the 12. "If he's innocent, you'll know. If he's not..." Her voice trailed off, but her eyes finished the sentence for her. I swallowed hard. I feel horrible doing this, like I'm the one betraying him. Natalie's eyes hardened. "Lauren, trust is earned, and right now, he's earning nothing but suspicion. You're not crazy. You're cautious. And if I'm right, cautious might save you." So, later that day, I went downtown like the dutiful wife he expected, cleaning his precious office, dusting the bookshelves, vacuuming the hardwood floor. Only this time, I installed a camera, my insurance policy, facing his brand new futon. The futon, supposedly for power naps. My hands trembled as I positioned the device, as though the clock itself could already see the truth I was too afraid to face. That night, Tyler texted to say he wouldn't be home until morning. Big client emergency. All-nighter. The lie slid across my screen like oil. At 11:30 p.m., my phone buzzed. Motion detected. My heart stopped. My hands shook so badly I nearly dropped the phone, but I opened the app anyway. There he was, Tyler Kendrick, walking into the office, tie loosened, hair slicked back, checking his watch like a man waiting for someone. Not a client, not a boss, a lover. 15 minutes later, she appeared. Blonde, young, dressed in a curve-hugging dress that screamed forbidden fantasy. She didn't even knock, just walked in like she belonged. And then he kissed her. My husband of 15 years kissed her like I hadn't been warming his dinner, ironing his shirts, or begging for scraps of affection. His hands tangled in her hair, his body pressed against hers, the futon groaning beneath their weight. Tears blurred my vision, but I couldn't look away. Each second on that screen was another hammer smashing what remained of our marriage. I wanted to throw the phone across the room, to scream until the walls cracked, but instead I watched in silence, my chest rising and falling like I was drowning. And then, the worst part. I felt calm. Not rage, not shock, just a cold clarity settling into my bones. He had made his choice. Now it was time for me to make mine. I called Natalie. My voice didn't tremble this time. I told her, "You were right. Her name is Samantha Whitfield. I found her on his client list." Natalie's reply was fierce, sharp as glass. "Good. Then let's plan." Some women hire lawyers when they catch their husbands cheating. Me, I called my best friend who owns cockroaches the size of credit cards. Because sometimes justice doesn't wear a suit, it crawls on 6 legs. The morning after I caught Tyler with Samantha, my body moved on autopilot. Coffee, dishes, laundry, the kind of mindless routines I had trained myself into for years. But beneath the quiet hum of housework, a new clarity grew louder. I wasn't going to cry in corners anymore. So when Natalie showed up, bottle of wine in one hand and fire in her eyes, I was ready to listen. 15 years, Nat, I whispered as we sat on the kitchen floor, porcelain shards from Tyler's grandmother's teacup crunching under us. 15 years wasted. Not wasted, she corrected sharply. Invested. And now it's time to collect interest. But first, we make him bleed. I blinked. Bleed? She smirked. Figuratively. Though I do have an idea. The next morning, I followed her into her university lab. Natalie was a biologist, her work obsessed with insects and creatures most people couldn't stand to look at. I teased her for it for years. But that day, as the fluorescent lights hummed above us and the air reeked of antiseptic, I realized those creepy pets might just become weapons. "Meet my special projects," she said, leading me to a glass enclosure. Inside, hundreds of Madagascar hissing cockroaches shifted like a living carpet, their glossy brown bodies shimmering under the light. I recoiled, gagging. "They're horrifying." "They're perfect," Natalie countered. "Resilient, sterile, and best of all, they scared the hell out of people." Her plan was simple, terrifying, delicious. We'd plant a container under Tyler's precious futon with the timer rigged to open at 3 a.m., when he and Samantha would be most occupied. My pulse quickened. This is insane. What if we get caught? For what? Natalie shrugged, slipping on gloves. Transporting exotic pets? They're not pests here. And besides, cheating husbands aren't a protected species. I laughed to spite myself. It was the first time laughter had felt real in months. That evening, while I dutifully cleaned Tyler's office, Natalie slid the container into place beneath the futon. She tapped the small timer device and whispered like a general before battle. Shock and awe. By 10 p.m., Tyler was home briefly to pack an overnight bag. He kissed my cheek absently, muttered something about a big client, and left without looking me in the eye. I stood in the kitchen, smiling sweetly while resisting the urge to wash his kiss off with bleach. At 11 p.m., Natalie arrived at my house with popcorn and her laptop. "Ready for the show?" she grinned. By 11:30, the camera feed showed Tyler fixing his tie in the mirror, fluffing the futon pillows like he was preparing for royalty. At 11:45, Samantha entered, her red dress clinging to every curve. They wasted no time. I turned away, nauseous, until Natalie hit fast forward. The two of them curled into sleep, smug and satisfied. And then We waited. 2 hours, 2 glasses of wine, 2 women plotting their own rebirth. At exactly 3 a.m., the timer clicked, and chaos was about to crawl. Some men buy roses for their mistress. Mine got roaches. Hundreds of them. And for the first time in years, I actually slept like a baby. The laptop screen glowed in the dark. Natalie and I huddled together on my couch with popcorn like we were about to watch a horror movie. Except this wasn't fiction. It was Tyler Kendrick's reality show, and he was about to meet his new co-stars. On the feed, he and Samantha lay tangled on the futon, both asleep, smug satisfaction written on their bodies. My hands trembled around my wine glass, not from nerves, but from anticipation. At exactly 3 a.m., we heard the faint click of the timer device. For a moment, nothing, and then movement. Glossy brown shapes sliding out of the container, antennae twitching, legs scratching against the futon fabric. The first shriek came from Samantha. High-pitched, blood-curdling. She bolted upright, flailing her arms, her blonde hair whipping like a frantic halo. "Oh my God, Tyler, they're crawling on me." Tyler jolted awake, blinking in confusion, until one of the roaches scuttled across his bare chest. Then the panic set in. "What the is happening?" he bellowed, leaping off the futon and slapping at his body like he was on fire. Natalie's hand flew to her mouth, trying to muffle laughter. I couldn't breathe. I was laughing so hard, silent tears spilled down my face. Samantha was hysterical, half-dressed, shrieking as she brushed roaches out of her hair, out of her dress. "This is disgusting. I'm out of here. You're disgusting." And just like that, gone. Tyler, however, was trapped in his own private apocalypse. Roaches scattered across the hardwood, climbed the desk legs, even dropped from the futon onto his exposed skin. He swung books, stomped his expensive shoes, cursed louder than I ever heard him. But there were too many. His face twisted between rage and terror as he flailed, sweat dripping, his dignity evaporating. This was the man who used to lecture me about keeping crumbs off the counter. Now he was swatting at phantom bugs, his empire crumbling under a wave of hissing insects. On the couch, Natalie whispered between fits of laughter. I didn't think she'd actually run out like that. Guess the romance is dead. I smirked, sipping my wine like a queen, watching her jester fall. No, I said, calm settling over me. The romance was dead a long time ago. Tonight, we just buried it. On screen, Tyler finally gave up, half-dressed, collapsing on the futon, his head in his hands, the room crawling with the consequences of his lies. For the first time in months, I felt something that wasn't pain. It was satisfaction. Not because I had ruined him, but because I had finally stopped letting him ruin me. Tomorrow, I thought, would be the real beginning. And Tyler Kendrick would never see me the same way again.
Cheating men have a script: deny, deflect, then beg. But nothing prepares them for the one word that slices deeper than betrayal itself: divorce. The morning after the roach apocalypse, I woke on Natalie's couch with a strange peace humming in my chest. My phone buzzed, Tyler's name flashing on the screen. I let it ring twice before answering. "Lauren? Thank God. Where are you? Something insane happened at the office. The place was crawling with cockroaches, giant ones. It was like a horror movie. I need you home." His panic might have fooled me once. Now it was just noise. I stayed at Natalie's. Girls' night. I lied smoothly. "I'll be home in an hour. We need to talk." That silence, the silence of a man who feels the ground shifting beneath him, was delicious. Talk about what? His tone sharpened, defensive. You'll see. When I walked into our house, Tyler was pacing the living room, hair disheveled, still in yesterday's wrinkled shirt. He rushed toward me as if a hug would erase months of betrayal. I stepped back. I saw you, Tyler. He froze. What do you mean? I saw you with her, Samantha, in the office, on the futon I helped you pick out. His face ran through every emotion: shock, denial, calculation. Finally, he snapped. You spied on me? That's an invasion of privacy. I laughed. A sharp, humorless laugh. Privacy. You cheated on me in a space I scrubbed clean every week. You lost privacy when you lost respect. He tried again. Lauren, it's not what you think. Samantha and I, it's just physical. It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't change how I feel about you or our marriage. Every word was a knife, not because I believed him, but because it revealed how little I mattered. His love wasn't love at all. It was convenience. You're right, I said quietly. It doesn't change our marriage, because our marriage was already broken. His expression softened, desperation leaking through. Baby, we can fix this. I'll end things with her. I'll get counseling, whatever you want. What I wanted. For the first time, I knew exactly what that was. I want a divorce. The word cracked the air between us like thunder. He flinched, then flushed red with anger. You don't mean that. You're upset. You're not thinking clearly. I met his eyes with a steadiness that surprised even me. Actually, I'm thinking clearly for the first time in years. I moved past him, heading upstairs to pack. He followed, his voice rising. You can't just walk away from 15 years, Lauren. What about everything we've built? The house, our life? I zipped my suitcase shut with finality. You walked away first, Tyler. You just didn't have the guts to tell me. Downstairs, suitcase in hand, I paused at the door. He stood there, hollow-eyed, sweating. Where am I supposed to go? He muttered. I turned the knob without looking back. That's not my problem anymore. And I walked out.
People think the hardest part of divorce is leaving. Wrong. The hardest part is waking up the next morning and realizing your life is finally yours, and you have no idea what to do with it. Natalie's guest room became my sanctuary. Small, plain, but mine. No expensive furniture Tyler had chosen, no rules about where things should go, no silent judgment about the way I folded towels. Just a bed, a lamp, and the sound of freedom rattling in my chest. At first, the silence felt suffocating. 15 years of living as someone else's assistant had conditioned me to constant noise. His footsteps, his demands, his sighs of disappointment. Now, there was nothing, just me. And the question, who am I without him? Natalie, of course, wasn't going to let me spiral. One morning over coffee, she said, "You need a job." I laughed bitterly. I haven't worked in 15 years. What am I qualified to do? Fold laundry professionally? She ignored my self-pity. You're a great baker. Remember sophomore year? Stress cupcakes? You could feed an army. It sounded absurd. Baking as work? But Natalie texted her cousin Sophie, who ran a little bakery downtown. Sophie said they were hiring for the morning shift. Go, Natalie ordered. Worst case, you get free croissants. The next day, I walked into Sweet Endeavors. The smell of cinnamon and butter hit me like a memory I didn't know I'd been missing. Sophie greeted me with flour on her cheek and warmth in her smile. Natalie says you bake. Want to try? By 4:30 the next morning, I was standing in a kitchen surrounded by racks of dough and humming ovens. Sophie showed me the ropes: croissants, muffins, cinnamon rolls. My hands shook at first, clumsy, unfamiliar. But as the hours passed, something in me clicked: measuring flour, kneading dough, timing the ovens. It wasn't just work, it was therapy. By the time customers streamed in at 9, trays of golden pastries lined the counter. Sophie broke open a croissant and inspected the flaky layers and nodded. "You've got talent. You're hired." That night, exhausted but proud, I deposited my first paycheck in a new bank account with my name only. It wasn't much, but it was mine. Meanwhile, Tyler's life was unraveling. Friends whispered updates, he looked disheveled, clients were leaving, his precious house was falling into chaos. He called and texted constantly, cycling between fury and begging. "You can't make it on your own," he sneered in one voicemail. "You'll be back." I deleted it with a smile. Because for the first time, I wasn't afraid of his words. I was building something, croissant by croissant, muffin by muffin. And one night, as I stood in Natalie's kitchen with flour still dusting my clothes, I realized something that made me laugh out loud. Tyler had mocked my shopping habits, but I was finally buying something priceless: myself. Cheaters think they're clever. They hide lovers, they hide lies, and worst of all, they hide money. But the universe has a funny sense of humor. The moment Tyler thought he'd broken me, I found the receipts. My divorce lawyer, Patricia Montgomery, was nothing like me. She was sharp, sleek, the kind of woman who wore heels like weapons. When I walked into her office for the first time, she didn't offer sympathy. She offered war. "She's been hiding money," she said flatly after reviewing Tyler's financials. "Transferring between accounts, underreporting income. He's trying to make it look like his business is struggling." My jaw dropped. "So all those late nights, all the sacrifices?" She gave a humorless smile. "He wasn't just cheating on you with Samantha. He was cheating you out of your share." I felt my blood boil. 15 years of cooking, cleaning, managing, sacrificing, and he had the audacity to try and walk away richer while leaving me with scraps? "Can we prove it?" I asked. Patricia's grin was feral. "Oh, honey, we can bury him." Meanwhile, Tyler's world was collapsing. He called me constantly, his messages a carousel of moods. One moment furious, "You'll regret this, Lauren." The next begging, "Please come home, I need you." Then pathetic, "The house is a disaster, I don't know how to do anything." I ignored them all. At Sweet Endeavors, I was thriving. Flour under my nails, aching feet, early mornings. It all felt better than gilded misery. Sophie began trusting me with more responsibility, even asking me to test new recipes. My salted caramel pudding became a customer favorite. The day I saw a line at the counter for something I had created, I nearly cried. But Tyler, his mask was slipping. Friends told me he'd lost major clients, that his once polished suits now looked wrinkled, that he'd been spotted in bars alone, drinking like a man drowning. And then came the night he showed up at Natalie's house. Rain poured outside, his shirt plastered to his skin, his eyes red-shot. "Lauren," he croaked when I opened the door, "please, I can't do this without you." I handed him a towel but kept my distance. "You don't miss me, Tyler. You miss the convenience of me." "That's not true," he snapped, but even he didn't sound convinced. "Samantha's gone. She left me, said I was pathetic. But you, Lauren, we can fix this. We've built too much." I almost laughed. Built too much? Everything we had built, he had bulldozed for cheap thrills. "I'm not coming back," I said firmly, "and when the lawyers are done, you'll realize you underestimated me." His face twisted. You can't make it without me. You'll come crawling back. But as I shut the door in his face, something inside me solidified like steel. No, Tyler. For the first time in 15 years, I was standing tall without you. Divorce isn't about broken hearts. It's about broken power. And when you finally take yours back, nothing tastes sweeter than watching the man who underestimated you choke on his own downfall. Patricia called on a Saturday morning, her voice brisk but triumphant. Good news! Tyler's lawyer wants to settle. I froze. Settle? What changed? She chuckled darkly. He's collapsing. Clients leaving, debts rising, lawsuits circling. He can't afford a long fight. He's offering half of everything, plus $30,000 in compensation for your unpaid contributions. Unpaid contributions. 15 years of labor disguised as love. Cooking, cleaning, managing his schedule, hosting his dinners, ironing his shirts, pretending not to notice his lies. Work no one ever valued. Until now. When do we sign? I asked, my voice steady. Friday. That week passed in a blur of pastries and papers. At the bakery, Sophie and I worked through orders while whispers spread. People loved my pudding so much, she suggested expanding the business. A new line, she said, featuring your creations. We'll call it Sweet Endings. The name made me laugh out loud. How perfect. Friday came. I sat across from Tyler in Patricia's office, pen in hand. It was the first time I'd seen him up close in months. He looked older, thinner, the shine of success scrubbed away. His suit was still expensive, but it hung on him like it belonged to another man. As we flipped through page after page, he barely spoke. His signature grew sloppier with each stroke. Finally, he broke the silence. So that's it? 15 years, undone by a few sheets of paper? I met his eyes. 15 years undone by your choices. His gaze softened for a fleeting second. I loved you, Lauren, in my way. I nodded. But your way wasn't enough. Not for me. The final page slid in front of me. I signed it, the ink flowing like freedom across the paper. It was over. Outside, the June sunlight hit my face as though the universe itself had been waiting to congratulate me. My phone buzzed, Natalie's text. All done, champagne's on me. That night, we celebrated at Lucia's, a cozy Italian place with fairy lights strung above the patio. Natalie raised her glass. To new beginnings. I clinked mine against hers, the bubbles sharp and sweet. To never letting anyone make me small again. Meanwhile, Tyler's spiral deepened. Friends reported his business was in shambles. Samantha had vanished for good. He sold his beloved Mercedes. Rumors swirled that his house, the house I had polished into perfection, was falling apart. Dishes piled high, weeds choking the garden. A part of me pitied him, but only a part. Because while he was sinking, I was rising. And for the first time in years, I could taste the future. Rich, sweet, and entirely mine.
Revenge is satisfying. Freedom is exhilarating. But rebuilding yourself? That's the real victory. Because nothing terrifies a cheating husband more than the wife he thought was weak becoming unstoppable. 6 months after signing the divorce papers, I stood in the expanded kitchen of Sweet Endeavors. The ovens roared, the scent of vanilla and caramel filled the air, and my hands worked swiftly, layering custards into glass jars for a catering order. My line, Sweet Endings, had exploded in popularity. Restaurants were ordering, customers lined up daily, and Sophie had made me her partner. One morning, the Boston Tribune food critic sat across from me in the bakery,
spoon in hand. After tasting my espresso pudding, she looked up with wide eyes. These are the best puddings I've had outside Paris. You sound your calling. The article dropped that Sunday. Headline, Sweet Endings, How a Divorce Birthed Boston's Most Delectable Desserts. My photo graced the page, not as Mrs. Kendrick, but as Lauren Kendrick, entrepreneur, creator, survivor. That night, Natalie brought 5 copies to dinner. You realize you're famous now, right? She teased, her grin wide. Hardly, I laughed. But deep down, pride bloomed. For once, I wasn't an accessory to someone else's story. I was the headline. Of course, Tyler tried to claw back into my life. A bouquet of lilies arrived at the bakery with the note, "I miss you. Please come home." Lilies. The one flower I had told him for years I despised. I rearranged them on the counter for customers to enjoy, tore up the note, and went back to work. That gesture summed up our entire marriage. He never listened, and I was done speaking to ears that refused to hear. When his call finally came, his voice was raw. "Lauren, I'm falling apart. The house is a mess. My business is dead. I can't sleep. I need you." I answered calmly, "You don't need me. You need a maid, a secretary, a nurse." And I was all those things, but never a wife in your eyes. Goodbye, Tyler. Silence on the line, then I hung up. Months later, at the launch of my first cookbook, Sweet Endings, Puddings, Custards, and New Beginnings, the bookstore was packed. Customers, press, Sophie, Natalie, everyone was there. And then, in the line, I saw her, Samantha. She looked nervous, clutching a copy of my book. "Hi," she said awkwardly. I'm actually a fan of your puddings." I smiled, amused by the irony. "Would you like it signed?" She nodded. I wrote, "To Samantha, may you always find the sweetness you deserve." When I handed it back, our eyes met. For the first time, no rivalry, no venom. Just 2 women who'd both escaped Tyler Kendrick's orbit. Later that night, Natalie and I sat on my roof deck, champagne in hand, the city lights shimmering below. "Any regrets?" she asked. I thought hard, then smiled. Just one. I wish I'd found my courage sooner, but maybe courage shows up right on time. We raised our glasses. "To courage," I said. "And to cockroaches," Natalie added with a wicked grin. We laughed under the stars, free, alive, unstoppable.